This is a film study look at Chuck Clark, who Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions just acquired via one-year contract. I think $1.5 million, maybe 1.6, somewhere in that range. I'm just going to go through the film and give you some plays from last year. Ironically, there's a number of them that are impressive and I think get to the point from Pittsburgh's 29-24 win in Detroit late last season. So I'm going to basically take a look at, I think, 4 or maybe 5 plays from the fourth quarter of that game. We're going to pick this up. Pittsburgh's up 29-17. I believe I have the score correct. Look, I think Chuck Clark, even dating back to his time in Baltimore, he made more plays, was more decisive, more impactful coming forward, moving downhill with his eyes forward where he can see the routes and the quarterback. I will say this, I find him to be better in zone, and that dates back to his time in Baltimore, to be honest with you. He's going to be spot shadowed in yellow here. This is a late version of one of the Steelers' main coverages that they've used over the years. I call it insert cover 3. Some people call it, cover 3 buzz, whatever. But the point is he's dropping down to handle this route by St. Brown. This is, like I said, late in the fourth quarter. I think it was about 6.5, maybe 7 minutes left, somewhere in that range. And St. Brown as the number 3 is, dead giveaway that it's passed, but you're down by 12 from a Lions standpoint. When I'm talking about cover 3 buzz, I'm talking about 3 deep defenders here, 4 underneath guys. And the point is that the buzz or insert is that someone is playing the flats and then the safety is dropping down to defend the hash area, hook to curl area, whatever you want to call it. In this case, it's a completion to St. Brown. Chuck Clark comes forward, makes the tackle. He can play free safety in the middle of the field. You'll see him in that role some in this film study. I think he's more of a branch replacement from what I see. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to sell you on the fact that he can actually replace, 100% or even anything greater than 70% of what Branch can bring. I think we're 2 plays later, so essentially the same sequence. Again, he's spot shadowed in yellow on the right-hand side of Pittsburgh's defense. This is going to be the same route, and he nearly takes this one away. In fact, when I say that, he nearly makes an interception. St. Brown is the number 3 in trips. Some of the observations that I have about him that I'll just provide as we go along. He not only adjusts well during the game, but he adjusts well during the play. And so I think that here he's selling this late. I think we got the same coverage, all right? I think you've got the nickel defender, in this case Ramsey, pushing to the flats. You can see some communication between those two occurring there. Queen on the other hash, this second level inside linebacker to the flats, to the top side of our screen, the Steelers left, and then he's going to drop down, but he's doing so late. And a veteran move, if you ask me, number 1. There's no big lead in here to him dropping down. Goff thinks this is there. It's not. Clark, I'll give the end zone angle. I just think it's a spectacular play. I actually kind of remember it. I just didn't remember that it was Clark, to be honest with you. I will tell you, he was a 6th-round pick for Baltimore, I think 2018, maybe 2017 draft. My apologies for that. And by the time the Ravens signed Earl Thomas, Clark was in a situation where he was a bona fide starter, and we were, willing to part with Earl Thomas along with the other issues, that played a role there. He's very good at communicating pre-snap. In this case, this is the same play from the end zone angle. He's communicating with Queen. Oftentimes, there'll be an inside linebacker will tap their outside hip to let him, the safety, know that they're going to rush out into the flats, or they'll tap their inside hip if they're going to move here and let the safety insert down onto the hash. The point here for me is that he disguised this a little bit. It's the same route from St. Brown that I showed you a moment ago. You're talking about 1:10 of gameplay separating these 2 plays. And here he is. They're up 12, so you know that Detroit's got to throw the football. And he's almost making an interception that clearly, would have closed things out. Or at least, it's a great pass defense. This is kind of Seahawks type stuff, if you ask me, from the standpoint of Clark can be assigned to a certain area, at least the film that I've seen, but he's familiar enough with the opposing team's offense and their attack that he can drop down late, if you will, to kind of disguise it as long as possible. Really late into the game now. This is after Jahmyr Gibbs, I think 4-yard touchdown, pulled Detroit to within 29-24, and then Pittsburgh actually missed a field goal that could have put them up by 8. So we're going to pick this up. It's a 1st and 16. This is after the offensive pass interference has been called on Tesla, the touchdown that would have put the Lions ahead to St. Brown. I will say this, Clark's snap count over the course of 2025. Definitely vacillated. Interested in, why that is. I know they made numerous acquisitions for their secondary. I've color-coded the routes that he deals with throughout this video, and this one is Jahmyr Gibbs, and it's to the other side. This is a touchdown if Clark isn't there. Now, this is by design from a Steelers standpoint. And what I mean by that is they're playing man on the X receiver to the bottom side of the screen. That's going to be Joey Porter Jr. against Jameson Williams. And then Gibbs is going to motion out, run across the formation, and he loses Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen is assigned to guard him here. Patrick Queen's going to hedge out with the motion by Gibbs. Basically, he's just matching the width so he doesn't get out leveraged to the sideline. And then he runs into, I think it's Tesla, right here. And that allows Gibbs basically a free lane opportunity. Part of this is scheme, meaning Clark is not designed or assigned, I should say, to help out here. Porter knows he's completely solo or man. But Clark is really good, if you ask me, at getting his eyes to the quarterback. I think he will look better against quarterbacks like Goff and others that tend to look where they're going to throw immediately after snap and don't really give a ton of obfuscation, if you will, by where their face mask is pointing. I think it's a really nice tackle. It's very physical. He doesn't give things away, he being Clark, in my opinion. I'm basing this off of 4 games. One of the Ravens games, the Ravens' loss in Pittsburgh. Their loss at home in Baltimore, I should say, in 2025. In addition, the wild card loss that Pittsburgh suffered at the hands of the Texans, really a one-sided game. The game against the Lions, and a game week 2, a loss at home against the Seahawks. Queen is assigned to Gibbs here. This is the same play. It's a 1st and 16. This is after the OPI on Tesla, like I said. Clark's eyes are here on Goff immediately, and Goff never looks to his side at all, so Clark is just tracking that. That was an issue at times for Goff, I think, in 2025. Basically, straight to St. Brown's side, oftentimes ignoring, if you will, opportunities to maybe take advantage of, a one-on-one here. I'm not saying that Williams wins this. In any case, Queen gets picked, and Gibbs I think this is a walk-in touchdown if Pittsburgh doesn't, A, happen to be in this coverage scheme, basically alleviating Clark of any responsibility helping here, and B, if Clark isn't so quick to, basically be able to focus in on Goff and then see the little brown leather football thrown in that direction, and he's already on the move. He really reminds me of some of the film I've seen the last 2 years with Tony Jefferson, another older safety who is, just actually re-signed with the Chargers. Tony Jefferson had a fantastic 2025, by the way. I think this is a touchdown opportunity for Gibbs if he can catch this ball and no defender, in this case Clark, is there to front him up immediately, or I should say actually go low to make the tackle. Gibbs, is wide open compared to the guy that's guarding him, Patrick Queen, who would not have a chance to catch him if Gibbs had, an unevaded path, or an open path, I should say, to the bottom right corner of our screen. 2 more plays from that same sequence. Again, it's Pittsburgh's win in Detroit. It's 29-24 here. I think as the ball is snapped, there's like 21 seconds left. In any case, he's to the read side, he being Chuck Clark. Williams is actually the target from the top side of our screen. It's because Pittsburgh's bringing a 3-man rush. So they're dropping 8 guys out in coverage. Here's the route combination that you get. So St. Brown, the flat route, and then over the top, what would be considered a high-low, is Raymond. And Clark stays inside leverage on that. Goff has, plenty of time. We're basically focusing on the defense that these 3 guys illustrate in zone. Clark being the deep defender, that is Ramsey. And then Joey Porter Jr. is the outside corner. They're dropping out into really what I would say is a Tampa 2 in the red zone, but it's an 8-man drop. Cam Hayward is dropping out underneath. Patrick Queen is getting more depth. So there's a differential between how deep these guys drop, and that's by design. The Tampa 2 mic drop can oftentimes leave things open underneath for the quarterback to access. Here is a red zone version of it, so that doesn't necessarily apply. But in any case, Clark is to the read side. You can see that Goff is looking there initially. It's a cover 2. I think that when you put smart players next to each other, right, good things happen, whether it's by design of the coverage scheme, which is the case here, or, things that are somewhat random. Clark is a smart football player. He's a veteran. He's experienced. He's a low-cost commitment for Brad Holmes in the front office, and I think that's the draw, obviously, right? Is that you can bring a guy in the building who's versatile. The drawback is he doesn't make a ton of plays on the ball, all right? Number one, when he's targeted. Number two, he's not a guy who's going to take the ball away, obviously like a Kirby Joseph. Now, this is the ensuing snap. It's a 3rd and 9. I love the design of this from a Lions perspective. But in any case, the ball is snapped, I think, with 16 seconds left. And then the ball is ruled incomplete with 11 seconds left. 3rd and 9, right before, this is the play before the failed catch by St. Brown and then lateral to Goff that ended up in a touchdown. The NFL film doesn't actually catch that. In any case, you can see he's communicating with Patrick Queen beforehand. It's another drop 8 for the Steelers. Again, it's kind of like a Tampa 2 drop 8. Flores stuff, if you ask me. And there's a hidden factor here that I want to kind of talk about for a moment, but I'm going to let this play run through. So Tesla's running it's not an over concept, but his route is deeper than St. Brown's. St. Brown is checking up, and I think that's by design. The Lions play call here is reflecting the fact that they know St. Brown is going to draw attention. In this case, he draws the attention of Patrick Queen. Goff's already let go of the football. The target here, the intention, is Tesla. And it's a jump ball. And I think it's Goff putting the ball in the right spot, making sure that Tesla is the only guy who has an opportunity to go up and get it. Tesla actually kind of fumbles. I don't want to say fumbles. Almost kind of catches the ball twice or doesn't handle it cleanly initially. But Clark is there to challenge. Clark can't get to the 10th floor like Tesla can. He doesn't have the same height or leaping ability, number one. Number two, he's older, and so doesn't have the same level of explosiveness. But he made contact enough such that you can, I think, sell this as he's a guy that's a competitor. I think to make a player comparison for him, as a safety, he's a better version of Rock Ya-Sin. And what I mean is last year, Rock Ya-Sin was what, 4th string corner, 5th string corner to begin the season, so much so that he was even transitioned or moved some to safety, right, in the preseason. And eventually, because of so many injuries, Ya-Sin had to play a lot of reps, and he played extremely well. I think Clark can do the same thing. I think the safety situation in Detroit with Branch being out for a while and then Kirby Joseph up in the air, this gives you a guy who can start. He can play a lot. In any case, there's Queen covering up St. Brown. And off screen to the bottom right for us, Tesla is there. Tesla is a built-in counter for this. And, I don't think Tesla's catching this cleanly initially. There's a little bit of a fumble that I know I didn't, or there's a little bit of a mishandling, I guess I should say, that I didn't see live. I'm talking about right there. But Clark is there to challenge, probably a differential of a 1.5 foot, maybe a foot, something like that. He just can't get up to that height vertically that Tesla can get to. But it's the 60th minute of the game. He's played a lot of snaps. He's a far more accomplished safety than anyone who played safety last year, other than Branch and Kirby Joseph, obviously. He's a better player than Hallett, than Maddox, in my opinion. I still think Detroit's going to bring someone in from the draft. The safety class this year, if you ask me, is too good to pass up on. There was a lot of film there against the Lions, a game that I thought you guys would be familiar with. Here's one snap from the wild card playoff loss at home to the Texans. It's 7-6 right here, Texans. I think we're mid-second quarter, and they're showing a one-high safety look. Clark is the safety spot shadowed here in yellow. Now, there's 100 other safeties who can do this. Okay, I'm not saying that Chuck Clark is the only guy. They're getting to a Tampa 2 look, but I think you get an idea that even at 30 or maybe 31 years of old as the season starts, he's got some range. He was a 6th-round pick from Virginia Tech, carved out a career in Baltimore, such that they were able to part with Earl Thomas, like I said, early in their contract. This is the route that he ends up defending. Now, I'm not going to lie, part of this ball being underthrown so much is that there ends up being pressure right in C.J. Stroud's face. So the ball is underthrown. Okay, but the point is Clark does get there. Would he be there if Stroud had, an absolutely clean pocket and could set his feet? Probably not. Not with this level of timing. But I will say this safety's not there either. So we'll pull this back a little bit. He's got good range, guys. He's a smart football player, not overly athletic compared to 6 or 8 of the safeties that are in this draft. Guys who are, probably bigger, probably stronger. Again, he was a 6th-round pick, 2017 or 2018. Where would Chuck Clark, coming out of college, be picked in this draft? Probably the 4th, 5th, or the 6th round. Having said that, He's a very smart player. I think he fits in with a multiple defense. And last year under Kelvin Shepard, Detroit was, nowhere near as multiple as the Steelers typically have been from a coverage standpoint. I mean, when I say that Clark can give you 70% of what Kirby can and 70% of what Branch can, the missing 30% is huge, right? For Branch, it's the interceptions, the coverage ability against anyone. And for Kirby, it's the ability to take the football away. Interceptions. This is a violent hit, week 2 against Torrey Horton, that really reminds me of Kirby Joseph, to be honest with you. From a timing standpoint, this is a game that Seattle won 31-17. The tight end up to the top here is going to stay into block, and that gives Chuck Clark the opportunity to be able to read the quarterback and then react to the route. So it's a 3rd and 12, like I said. It's an 11-yard catch by Horton over the middle. There's no one else there. Almost kind of like a two-man situation, if you will. The way these guys match up, Ramsey is the man assigned to guard Horton. And because of the combo release, almost kind of a stack release here, Ramsey ends up getting beat pretty bad. Clark has to cover this up. He's a smart, tough, to use a Detroit vernacular, gritty football player. Plays the game the right way, in my opinion. I will admit that when he was in Baltimore, I was a pretty big fan of his. By 2021 and 22, I don't want to say soured, but there was a point where I was like, okay, we can't trust him to do certain things. And I'll tell you what that is. I did not like then his man coverage on tight ends, especially into the boundary. I felt like his eye discipline oftentimes betrayed him. I have no idea what the target rate or how often he was targeted in 2025 in Pittsburgh was at all. I don't have the data available on that. I don't need it. I'm telling you, I'm seeing basically the same player in 2025 film that I saw pre-ACL injury in Baltimore. 2022 would have been the last time he was in uniform for the Ravens. All right, later in the second quarter here, actually on that same drive against Seattle in week 2, he's got the ability to adapt during the play, basically communicate to the safeties and or corner to his side or the inside linebacker like I showed you Patrick Queen against the Lions. This is a insert or buzz cover 3 with a 4-man rush, except Clark's not the guy dropping down. This safety to the right is dropping down, and then this nickel DB is pushing out to the flats. This is one of Pittsburgh's favorite coverages. I've seen it so much in watching the Chuck Clark film that I'm going to do a standalone video on it. In any case, you get some communication from this corner at the top side of our screen to Clark's left. So we're talking about Clark here and the corner here, both being able to see the tight end. You've got trips to the bottom side of our screen and the running back set to that side. So trips closed. Some people would say A, some people B, but trips with the running back to that side. And you get no release by the tight end. So this corner signals to him, hey, go ahead and take over something from the other side. Now, oftentimes the backside safety is assigned to help with 3 vertical, especially if 3 is speed. And so what I mean by speed is you've got a receiver, and a receiver. If number 3 was a tight end, you would not feel as threatened by a seam release as the far side safety. In any case, Sam Darnold escapes this. And so the corner and Clark are actually communicating right here during the play. Basically, they match up with Cooper Kupp as Sam Darnold starts to escape the pocket. Darnold eventually throws this away. Again, there's 100 other safeties that can do this. I'm not saying that there's anything really special about Chuck Clark other than the fact that he is versatile enough to be moved around in coverage roles. So the first 2 plays that I showed you, he was the guy dropping down. Recall the completion to St. Brown on the first snap of this video, or the first play of this video. And then the second play that I showed you, actually separated by 2 snaps of gameplay, is when he makes that great pass defense or near interception, if you will, on a ball thrown by Jared Goff. That's why I like the signing for the Lions, is that it's important to mention out of 4 games film that I have of him, he's a guy who you can move around a lot. He does play better coming forward, reading forward, if you ask me. He's more impactful that way. He gets his hands on the football more often than that. And that dynamic is what existed in Baltimore dating back to 2019, 20, 21, and 22. The injury in 2023 in ACL, looking back on it, I wonder what his reputation would be like if he had been able to be healthy for that 2023 team. Of course, that was Mike McDonald's last year in Baltimore, right? Historic defense. I think we all know that. Mike McDonald elevates players defensively. And so if Clark had been healthy that season and able to participate, I wonder if he would have, well, Geno Stone had 7 interceptions and parlayed that into a contract with the Cincinnati Bengals. I wonder if Clark would have, Clark's reputation would be bigger now. In any case, same game. It's a 2nd and 1. Run away from him. He's rolled up to the side away from the tight end. So they've rolled the strong safety up weak. The outside linebacker, Sawyer, I think is supposed to be able to dig inside this gap here between the right tackle and that's Cooper Kupp there. And that would allow Chuck Clark to go to boot, be responsible for boot by the quarterback if he was to keep it. It is actually a run away from him. Sawyer can't get away from Kupp. Maybe he's getting held here. I think Sawyer ends up complaining about a possible face mask by Cooper Kupp. Missed tackle by a defensive tackle for the Steelers. And then Clark cleans it up. They do get the first down. It's Kenneth Walker. And Kenneth Walker had a badass day in this Week 2 win in Pittsburgh. But Clark is a good tackler. Is he as great of a tackler as Brian Branch? No, very few are. That's why I say 70% of what Branch can give in terms of versatility. The difference there, the remaining 30% is large because he does not cover tight ends or receivers nearly as well as Brian Branch does. So, I think there might be a more dramatic shift to a versatile coverage system. Relying on man, to me, puts Chuck Clark as your middle of the field free safety. I think there's probably better options in this draft. A guy like Bud Clark or a couple of others. If you're going to, play a lot of man as far as a guy who could be a middle of the field free safety. In any case, same game against the Seahawks. This is late in the second quarter. This is, by the way, going to be the same insert or buzz cover 3 to his side. So he's dropping down a little bit, kind of showing it a little bit more. Now, only the wide receiver releases initially. The tight end does actually chip to block. And similar to Goff with St. Brown, Darnold is looking, at JSN immediately. The linebacker pushes to the flats. Clark can sit down on the hash. The other hash defender is Patrick Queen. Watch how Queen gets moved so easily by Darnold looking to the top side. Queen is, what I would say, he's an inside linebacker that takes the cheese. Wherever the quarterback looks, he's gone. We're talking about number 6 right here. We'll pull this back a little bit. You're welcome to watch his drop out into a cover 3. I'm saying these 4 underneath defenders here are your cover 3. There's your 2 outside corners. And as soon as Darnold looks up here to JSN's side, Queen is gone, and that opens up the possibility for Kupp underneath. Basically, there's more space there for Cooper Kupp to catch the ball. He's still going to catch it, right? But the idea for me is that Chuck Clark, I don't know how many times he was targeted in 2025. I suspect that it's a minimal amount because he's oftentimes in position like this, such that the quarterback goes elsewhere. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense, but I would say that's reliant on a zone-based system. He's not a nickel, if you ask me. He's a strong safety / free safety guy who's going to put himself in, at best, he's going to put himself in good position and try to take away routes. And then he's also very aggressive at something Dan Campbell has talked about a lot, trying to punch the football out. Very aggressive tackler, if you ask me. He's committed to pretty much everything that he does on the football field. All right, this will be a very similar reaction to the St. Brown play. The first 2 snaps that I showed you in this video, there's a quad set to the top side of the screen for the Seahawks. Look, the Seahawks early in 2025, I don't think Kubiak trusted the offensive line. I don't think anyone knew that they were going to pass pro so well, so consistently over the course of the season. In any case, he's got quads to his side. Here's the route concept that's going to occur. Again, it's JSN. You can substitute JSN for St. Brown. He's very aware, if you ask me, of routes that are occurring and also who is running that route. So there's 3 receivers involved in the route. There's a tight end who stays down here to help out. I think that's TJ Watt. And then a running back, Charbonnet, is set up to help out with this edge defender to the top side of our screen. He'll jump down. This is late second quarter, so they know that Seattle's in an obvious passing situation. It's not a insert or buzz cover 3. It almost really kind of ends up looking like what some people call a regular Tampa 2. You do have a Mike Backer who's getting depth, and he's opening to the side of the pass strength. The pass strength would obviously be where the 4 receivers are there. Well, it's 3 receivers and one running back. You've got a flat defender here, a flat defender here, hook defender in the form of Queen. And again, Chuck Clark, who was lined up at this depth, is dropping down to the hash. That's why I say I feel like he's more of a Brian Branch type player for Detroit. Certainly not anywhere near as effective, in my opinion. But because you're going to get similar reactions from him on film, you have similar reactions to him from him on film, is what I should say, is a player that, in my opinion, Detroit can look at and they can deploy to line up in a 2-high safety structure and spin or drop down. I think him and Kirby Joseph would probably fit best together if Kirby is healthy and ready to go. He reacts quickly on things in front of him. He's a veteran football player. I think he's an immediate upgrade over all of the other guys who played safety last year once Branch and Kirby Joseph went out. I guess one way to put it, I hate to go all Brian Scalabrine on anyone who's still listening, but the gap between Clark and Branch/Joseph is a big one. Their ability to make plays on the football. Branch as a blitzer is fantastic. Kirby Joseph was on I don't know if a historic track, but a high-level track projection as far as taking the football away, interceptions, and still getting 80 tackles a year. So I think the gap between Clark and those two is pretty big. Having said that, he's way closer to those two, even in 2025/26, than the guys who played safety for Detroit last year are to him. Hence the Brian Scalabrine reference. If you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to look it up. Basically, his response to a trash talker in a one-on-one basketball situation, Brian Scalabrine being a former NBA player, was, "I'm closer to LeBron than you are to me." Chuck Clark isn't that kind of guy, doesn't talk a whole lot of shit, plays football the right way, if you ask me. Very intelligent guy, also high character. Someone that I hope is around for the entirety of the 2026 season, even after Branch presumably comes back and hopefully Kirby is healthy all year. Very good football player, my opinion. Perhaps a little bit skewed. You have to also remember he went to Pittsburgh last year, and so the Ravens and Steelers, natural, obvious rivals, have a lot of respect for Chuck Clark. I never anticipated doing a video on him going to Baltimore or Detroit. If you had given me a heads up on Sunday and said, "Hey, you'll be doing a Chuck Clark video this week of him signing with some team that you've watched a lot of film of," I would have thought it would be the Seahawks. A reunion with McDonald, and that system kind of made sense. But and Seattle, I don't see them taking a safety with either of their first 3 picks. They've gone really light, Seattle, on this draft. I think they only have 4 selections, or maybe 5 in the entire draft. Detroit's sitting on 2 fourths, 2 fifths, 2 sixth round picks, I believe, along with a first and a second. I don't think Detroit's going safety at 1 or 2. I think they go safety at some point in this draft, probably in the 4th or the 5th. There's a ton of talent there. I've really enjoyed trying to put together a website called draftsignal.pro about this draft. I did a 3-team mock Sunday night. You're more than welcome to check it out. I'll link it up in the description. It's about the draft. I do project Detroit taking a safety, creating some competition for Clark, assuming that Kirby is healthy and ready to go, that other safety spot. To me, Chuck Clark looks like a guy who, again, similar to Rock Ya-Sin, he could start for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and then if you have everyone healthy, Branch and Joseph, he may not be a starter and may not play much that week. In any case, if you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number 1. Number 2, if you think other Lions fans would enjoy this look at Chuck Clark, a player you may not have ever even heard of prior to him signing with the Lions this week, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.